What's up? There are two types of anxiety. Did you know that? This is something that I love talking about because a lot of people struggle with the feeling of anxiety. Now, what I'm talking about today is like feeling anxious, not necessarily like the clinical diagnosis of having anxiety. And there are two causes of anxiety, or your brain will cause you to feel anxiety for two different reasons. One, and the one that we most likely or most commonly rely on or think about is when we feel like our life is in danger. Your brain's number one purpose, its number one job is to keep you alive. So if your brain senses a threat to your body, a threat to your well-being, any type of threat to you, it's going to trigger anxiety. And that anxiety comes in and it's just a warning. Hey, something could go wrong here. Hey, protect yourself. Hey, be aware. There might be a threat present. It's like built into your DNA. So when you feel anxiety, typically that's what you think your brain is trying to tell you, is that there's an imminent threat present. Now, what most people don't realize is that the second type of anxiety is often mistaken for the first. Most of the time in life, when you feel anxiety, most of the time, it's not because you are in danger. It's not because there's an imminent threat. Occasionally, that's the case. Like if somebody runs up to you with a knife, or if you're having a heated conversation and somebody balls up their fists, or if there's like, I don't know, a projectile flying at your face, like those responses that you have to pull away and to protect yourself, those are good responses. But most of the time when you feel anxiety, it's not because you're in physical danger. There's not a lion hiding behind a bush or a rock that's about to jump out and eat you. There's not a bear that's like in your house that's ready to take your life. What most of us feel anxious around is typically associated with being outside our comfort zone, with a growth experience, something that's a unique or a new situation that's putting pressure on us in a way that we haven't felt that pressure before. So the first time you give a presentation at work, you're going to feel a little bit of anxiety. The first time you give a public talk, you're going to feel a little bit of anxiety. That moment where you have to have that hard conversation with your partner, you're going to feel anxiety. You're going to feel anxiety if you go do a ropes course for the first time. You're not necessarily in danger, but it's something outside your comfort zone, and your brain is going to trigger that, hey, be careful mechanism in the back of your head. So the trick here, if you are dealing with a lot of anxiety, is to realize which anxiety you are dealing with. It creates a lot of clarity. Am I in danger? Is there an immediate threat to my well-being? And if there's not, the anxiety that you're feeling is likely because you're in a new situation. You're in a situation that might require you to do something you haven't done before. It might require you to do something that's uncomfortable, but you're not in danger. And when that's the case, there's a way to approach anxiety that will actually help you push through and feel good about it. And that is to make friends with your anxiety. A lot of the people I talk to, they'd want to get rid of their anxiety. They want to like push it down. They want to ignore it. They want to escape it. And that doesn't really work. As a matter of fact, the research shows that when you try and ignore feelings or push aside feelings like anxiety and depression, they can actually rebound and come back even worse and make your life really miserable. So I want to give you some tips as to what you can do if you are feeling anxious and there's not an imminent threat present in your life. So the first thing that I want you to do is to get curious. Meet your anxiety. Hey, anxiety, how's it going? What are you trying to protect me from? What are you trying to warn me about here? You know, your brain doesn't necessarily always tell you the truth about the signals that it sends you. It just goes, "Lah," and then you go, "Lah." And sometimes it helps to slow it down and be like, okay, my brain's freaking out right now. It's telling me there's a threat. Is there really a threat? If there's not a threat, what's the thing that my brain is perceiving as a threat? What is it trying to protect me from? Maybe you're having a hard conversation with your partner, something that makes you uncomfortable to talk about. And the anxiety is coming up because you're like, oh, if this conversation doesn't go well, the irrational fear is that my partner might leave me. I might be left alone. And so there's this anxiety on top of it. And if you can make friends with that anxiety and say, hey, thank you for warning me and caring about me enough to care about my relationship and not want me to be alone, I'm going to take a couple deep breaths. And I actually trust my partner a lot. They're not going to run out on me if we have this conversation. And suddenly your anxiety will go, oh, okay, glad you're listening. Just wanted to make sure. And it steps back. You know, if you're feeling anxiety because your kid won't stop crying and your brain starts to go, anxiety, 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 you take a deep breath and go, is there an imminent threat? Am I in danger? If you go, no, I don't think anything's going to jump out and hurt me right now. My kid is just crying a lot. What do you think what is my anxiety trying to teach me right now? Oh, maybe it's like preying on my insecurities that I'm not a good parent, or maybe my anxiety is saying there's something wrong with my kid and I don't know what it is. And if that's the case, you can take a deep breath and go look, and it's like, oh, just throwing a tantrum, or oh, let's have a little conversation with the kid. Seems like they're holding their arm or something. Maybe they have a broken arm and we can take them to the doctor and get rid of the thing that's making them cry. But when you start to make friends with your anxiety, you start to realize that the majority of the things that you're worried about or that you're anxious about are typically things that you can handle. They're not that big of a deal. And when instead of running away from your anxiety, you embrace your anxiety, you become friends with it and you get curious about it, that anxiety typically becomes a great guide for your life. Anxiety and growth always come hand in hand. I can't tell you how many people who run away from amazing opportunities to level up as human beings, whether professionally, whether relationally, whether personally, like there's all these different areas of your life. If you run away from anxiety, you miss out on the growth opportunity. I think about like the first time I did an interview for my podcast. Oh my gosh, I was so nervous. I stood outside the house for like, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes going, I don't know if I can do this. And then when I was putting all my equipment together, my hands were shaking. I wasn't in danger. I was just doing something new. I had uncomfortable, oh man, I hope nobody goes back and listens to my first couple interviews now, because they're bad. And they're bad because I was nervous, because I was listening to my anxiety. But as I became friends with my anxiety, took some deep breaths and pushed through it, I became a pretty decent interviewer. And now I sit here and talk to you alone in a room, which was uncomfortable for a while as well. And it's not that big of a deal for me anymore. And that growth comes because I met my anxiety, I got curious about it, and I pushed through it. So it's really important to understand the difference between the two types of anxiety. And if you're not in danger, if there's no threat present that will cause you physical, mental, or emotional harm, it's really great to start getting curious about what your anxiety is actually trying to warn you about, to become friends with your anxiety, to take some deep breaths and listen to it, and then learn the lesson and push through it. And what happens is, as you push through those anxieties, as you learn to become friends with the anxiety that you feel, you actually become more resilient. You become stronger as a person. You become capable of enduring more. You're able to lift a heavier burden. You're able to function at a higher level in your life, in all areas of your life. This is how resilience is made. Just like to get stronger, you have to go to the gym and you have to tear down your muscles. To get stronger emotionally and mentally, you also have to go through a process of breaking down. You have to kind of feel the tension of the anxiety and push through it. And it might be really uncomfortable and it might be really hard, but on the other side is growth. So if there's conversations that you're scared to have, ask yourself why you're scared to have them. What is the result that you're scared of experiencing? If you are, I don't know, maybe you're feeling anxious about some of the habits that you've cultivated over the last couple of weeks in quarantine. Maybe there's some experiences that you have had in your life that cause you anxiety, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's going to happen again. It's going to happen again. And anytime you're put in a situation that's remotely close to the situation where you were hurt in the past, that anxiety comes up and it warns you about something that remind you of the time that you got hurt before, and you freeze up and you retreat instead of pushing through and conquering. So that is my message for you today. If you want to grow, if you want to be better, if you want to be stronger, if you want to be more resilient, you have to become friends with your anxiety. And 99% of the time in this modern life, unless you're like in a car in traffic and somebody's swerving, or something crazy is happening in your life, 99% of the time, the anxiety that you feel isn't because you're in danger. It's not your brain trying to keep you alive. It's actually just the anxiety that precedes growth. Now, last part of the message. If you are ready to grow, if you're ready to level up, if you're ready to become more resilient, a great way to do it is to join the Epic Wives Experiment. The reason is because we provide a safe place for you to venture into the uncomfortable. You get, if you are a lady here, if you're a wife, you get a community of amazing women who are all going through the same experiences that you are. And there is strength in numbers. I promise you, if you go into the jungle by yourself, it could be terrifying. But if you go into the jungle with a tribe of people who have your back and they know what they're doing and they're helping you along the way, it is not as scary. When you're doing new things by yourself, it can be overwhelming and intimidating. When you have a guide, when you have somebody there and a community of people going through this experience with you, it is not as scary, and you're more likely to stick to it and to follow through. On top of that, you get access to me and Laura Heck, which is amazing. Laura's my good friend. If you haven't met her, she's a certified Gottman therapist, marriage and family therapist. She's amazing. And we're going to go with you over an entire month and give you a series of amazing experiences that are going to push you a little bit outside your comfort zone, but help you experience radical growth. And the cool thing is that when you change yourself, when you lean into that discomfort and you make an adjustment in your own behavior and in your own mindset, your marriage is a system. And when one part of the system changes, the other part has to respond. And so when you start to show up differently, your partner starts to show up differently. And it's crazy to actually experience how much your marriage can change without your partner even knowing that you're doing these experiments, without even having their buy-in. They don't even have to be conscious of it, and you will make your marriage better. So I want to invite you, if you want to practice stepping into your anxiety, becoming friends with your anxiety, and making positive change in your life. Maybe you've been stuck for a little while. Maybe you're feeling overwhelmed, a little resentful, stressed out. You're feeling like a little hopeless, like life isn't changing and it's not what you want it to be, but you don't really want to admit it to yourself. You don't want to bring it up because it's like uncomfortable and awkward. And, you shouldn't be a complainer because you kind of have it pretty good, but at the same time, you don't have it as good as you want. Now is the time to sign up. Just go to epicwiseexperiment.com. There is a link in the description. And I would love to hang out with you for a month and help you take your marriage to the next level or make it much better than it is right now, especially if you're struggling. That's my message for you guys today. Sarah Ann, do I do more posts about this? I have a couple podcasts about this, I think. I'd have to go through and look through the history. But I'm glad that you dropped in. And I hope that you enjoyed the message. Thanks, guys. I'll see you around soon. Hey, thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. I really appreciate it, and I know my team appreciates it too. A lot of time and thought and energy goes into every single one of these episodes, so it means a lot when you listen. If you enjoyed today's episode, there are two things that I would love for you to do. One would be to take a screenshot of this episode on your phone and post it on social media somewhere, and then just tag me. I would love to hear what you enjoyed about the episode, if you learned something new today, if you were inspired to take action to make your relationship better. Tell me all the things. I love seeing those posts on social media, especially when I'm tagged in them. The other thing that you can do is leave a rating or a review on iTunes. When you do that, it helps boost us in the rankings and makes it more likely that other people who are looking for answers or looking for help inside their marriage will find us. And that is huge because it changes lives, as you know. So if you could leave us a rating or review, that would mean so much to us. I'm excited for you to tune in. And next week, we've got another great episode planned for you. Thank you again for listening.